What is going on, everybody? Lamont at large. Today we are at the Woodlawn Cemetery once again here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I must say, this is the nicest I've ever seen this cemetery, with the grass being green and all. I guess they started watering it once again, because the last few times I've been out here, this grass was looking quite sad and pathetic. We do, have a desert environment here, but it's still always nice for the residents here in the surrounding areas and people that come and visit their family that they see nice green grass at this cemetery, which, Woodlawn is the oldest cemetery here in Las Vegas. It's been around for about 110 years. And this cemetery has a lot of history, a lot of stories locked up inside 6 feet underground. This is Private Valentine Thomas, Company G, 13th Texas Volunteer Cavalry. Fought for the Confederacy during the Civil War. Lived to be 96 years of age. He did have a wife. She died in Utah, and he's buried here by his lonesome. July 4th, 1977, we're in Las Vegas, Nevada. And on that date, if you're a law enforcement officer, there's a very good chance that you are working on that day. It's going to be very, very busy. 24-year-old Allan Sharp is at home having dinner with his mom and dad. He asks his mom, he says, "Hey, can I borrow $30? I want to go out with my friends." And she looks in her purse and she doesn't have really any cash on her. So she writes him a check. And he kind of looks at her like, "Oh boy, write a check." She said, "Just go cash it at a store or whatever." We fast forward about 45 minutes later. There's a pickup truck that is darting in and out of traffic driving down Lake Mead Boulevard. This truck is driving very, very fast, very, very aggressively, and honking, and all of a sudden it gets to the I-15 on-ramp, which is about a mile straight ahead from where I'm pointing the camera, and the truck crashes into a fence post. Now, witnesses to the accident, some of them, they stop to check on this guy, and this guy is bleeding profusely. So they call 911, and paramedics with police arrive to cordon off the area. And one of the cops goes to the young man behind the wheel. He's slumped over, and he's bleeding, pretty badly. One of the paramedics is attending to him, and he checks his pulse. There isn't one. And as they're cutting off his shirt, checking his pulse, trying to bring him back to life, they notice that he has a gunshot wound to his right arm, and it looks like it went through his arm into his chest. Unfortunately, they were not able to revive him. He sadly died at the scene. And this is not a traffic fatality. Now we have a homicide. So the police run the plate on the back of the truck, and it comes back to Allan Sharp. And the police, they have the sad task of going to his residence and telling his folks that their 24-year-old son is dead. They're interviewing a woman who is hysterical, and they're asking her what had happened when he left home. And she tells them, "I wrote him a check for $30 and he left, and that's it." Now, he doesn't have that $30 on him. So now homicide detectives have to find where he cashed that check. And as they're waiting to hear from the bank to see where the check is, detectives, they start staking out the area of where the incident occurred. So about 4 days later, the bank comes back and it says, "Hey, that check was cashed at Bruce's liquor store." This is a liquor store that's over on H in Lake Mead. Not a very good neighborhood. So the detectives, they go to the liquor store and they say, hey, we're inquiring about this kid right here. His name's Allan Sharp. He was shot and killed about a week ago. Does he look familiar to you? And the employees at this liquor store, they're not really wanting to talk, and they say they've never seen him before, or they don't remember him coming in there to cash that check. So the detectives, they leave empty-handed, and they go back to their car, and they said, hey, you know, there's a snitch that I know in the area. He knows everything. Nothing's gonna happen in this area without him knowing about it. His name is Freddie Walker. So the detectives go to Freddie's home. He just got out of prison on a robbery charge, so he's out on parole. The officers, they're coming up to the house, and the windows open, and they can see that it looks like Freddie's smoking something. And so they knock on the door, and he jumps up startled, and he gets to the door, and he says, hey, and before he can say anything, the cops, they stop him. They say, listen, we don't give a crap what the hell you're doing. We need some answers. We're investigating the homicide of this kid right here. He shows them a picture of Allan Sharp. And they said, do you know anything about it? And he says, nah, man, I don't know anything. I haven't seen or heard anything. And one of the other detectives, he says, listen, I know you're BSing us, and I hate for your parole officer to find out that you've been doing drugs, because we can make a quick call and you'll be back up in Indian Springs doing the rest of your time. You got a pretty good deal on that robbery charge. If we violate your parole right now, get it violated, you're probably going to be going back up to clean up about the final 3 years of your original prison sentence. So he says, okay. He goes, I know who shot him. It was Cleveland Biggs. And they said, Cleveland Biggs. That name doesn't ring a bell to any of the detectives. And they tell him, how do you know Cleveland shot him? And he said, because I was there. I was in front of the liquor store. And they said, well, tell us what happened. He said, well, he went up to this kid who went to go cash a check there. He comes out with some money, and Cleveland pulls out a gun just as he got into his truck. And I heard a shot, and the truck took off. And then Cleveland tells me, oh, I think that I shot somebody. Now, this name Cleveland Biggs, they run a check on it, and there's no arrest record for a Cleveland Biggs. But they start going around town asking about this Cleveland guy, or the guy they call Biggs. So somebody says, oh yeah, I think I know who you're talking about. So they find this fake name character, Cleveland Biggs, and they pull him over, and they're inquiring about this murder. Now, he's very defensive, and he's not talking. So the detectives now, they feel that this is the guy that a very, credible snitch said is responsible for the murder. So they take him down to the station, and they book him for possession of marijuana. He had like $5 of weed on him. And in the interrogation room, they're trying to get him to talk. He's not talking. He's not saying anything. Now, the autopsy report had come back, and the murder weapon was a 9mm. Now, when they pulled him over in his car, he doesn't have a gun on him. And they're saying, where's the gun? Where's the, we know that you're responsible for killing Allan Sharp. And he's not saying a word. He's not saying anything at all. So they book him for the marijuana. And now they probably have about 72 hours to get the gun, get some more evidence before they, put a murder charge on him. So as they're doing that, something else funny comes up about this case. The detectives go back to Freddie's house, and they're inquiring about, has anything came up? Has a gun turned up? We got this guy on a marijuana charge. We could file a murder charge on him. However, there's a good chance that it's not going to stick. So they really, really need the murder weapon. Now, Freddie, he has no idea. He hasn't heard or seen anything about a gun turning up or what have you. But later on in the day, Freddie calls the cops and he's like, hey, I know where the gun is. It's at Tom's house. And they said, are you sure that's the gun? He said, yep, that's the gun. Cleveland left it at his house. So they go to Tom's house, and this guy, Tom, he opens the door. He's almost like he's expecting them. He says, it's right over there on the table. Just like that. So they go, and on the table in a brown paper bag is a 9mm pistol. And they asked this guy, Tom, well, where'd you get this gun from? He said, I got it from Freddie Walker. He gave it to me. And now they're thinking, okay, Freddie Walker gave you this gun. Well, why does Freddie have the murder weapon? And then now they start thinking to themselves, something's not vibing, something's not right. They go back to Freddie's house and they said, Tom told us that you sold him the gun about 2 hours ago. And Freddie starts getting lost in his own lame story. So come to find out, Cleveland wasn't the one who shot and killed Allan Sharp. It was Freddie Walker. He was at the liquor store. He's the one that tried to rob him. So they go back to the jail and they're talking to Cleveland Biggs. And he basically says, look, I was outside of the liquor store. Freddie went up to him with the gun, tried to rob him. The kid gave him some kind of money. And then Freddie was trying to take his ring and the kid wouldn't give him the ring. And they started fighting. And then as the kid in the truck took off, Freddie shot him. The reason why I didn't want to talk is because, well, after he shot him, like, I ran with him because I was scared. And I didn't want to be arrested and charged with accessory. So they eventually arrest Freddie Walker and they charge him with the murder of Allan Sharp. This kid was murdered over $30. And Freddie Walker ended up getting life in prison, but in some cases, life really isn't truly life. And eventually he got paroled in 2011. He did 33, 34 years in prison and murdered this kid, all over $30. $30. Mike Landers, originally from Knockmonler, Ireland, born May 29, 1891, died June 23, 1933, emblazoned on the bottom right-hand corner, it says, at the age of 42, he gave his life while constructing the world's largest dam and National Historic Landmark known as Hoover Dam. That was a very, very dangerous job for the time it took to build the Hoover Dam. And in that time, from 1931 to around 1936, well over 100 people lost their lives building it, and the estimate could be even as high as 150. I don't think all the deaths related to the construction of the dam were really properly reported. Walter Carl Huff died in Searchlight, Nevada, May 1937. He was 57 years of age when he died. He died of cirrhosis of the liver. I'm not 100% sure the story of what happened, but Antonio was only 20 years of age when he died of sepsis. He was at work and some kind of very terrible accident happened, and his left leg was crushed under some kind of monumentous weight, and the leg was amputated, and from that wound he died. To my family, with all my love, we will meet again. Don't know where or when. Together again forever. Born on my father's birthday. That's her father right there. And on the opposite side, her mother. Jody Marie Miller was a student at Garside Junior High at the time of her murder. Only 13 years of age. On June 21st, 1971, somehow or another, she gets into trouble with her parents. So they ground her and they tell her to go to her room. Later on that evening, after her parents went to sleep, Jody sneaks out of her window. The following day, the parents see that she's not in her room and they call the police and they file a missing persons report. She would go missing for about 5 months, and then on November 2nd, 1971, over on Jones and Lone Mountain, a man's dog came back with something in its mouth, and he's looking at it. It's a human foot. He calls the police. They come out and they start doing an extensive search of the area. At that time, it's all desert. It wouldn't take them too long to find Jody's remains. She had been wrapped in a blanket, and then that blanket was shoved in a large garbage bag with both ends tied with rope. The body was so badly decomposed, I don't believe they were able to ascertain how she was murdered, but this, in fact, was a homicide, and a homicide that is still unsolved to this very day. It's been, almost 55 years. Almost 55 years. That is crazy. 702-229-2653. If anybody has any information on the unsolved murder of Jody Marie Miller. Our daughter, Donave, Mr. and Mrs. O.D. Bell, God bless her and keep her until resurrection. This caught my eye because there's a truck on his headstone, and Larry Austin indeed was a truck driver, and he was driving with his son Larry Jr. right here, and they were in Victorville, California, and got into a truck accident and killed both the father and son. Back in 1958, Dwight D. Eisenhower is in his second term as President of the United States of America. Jukeboxes, some of them are still 5 cents, but the other ones, they've raised their price to 10 cents and people are pissed. Elvis is a soldier? And 25 million hula hoops have been sold in this country. I actually did a quick video about the guy who invented the hula hoop, kind of invented it. I lost that video. Hopefully, if I can find it, I'll put it out on my other channel. If not, well, I'll have to go back to Orange County and redo the video. And in Las Vegas lives one used cars salesman extraordinaire, 141-year-old Albert Bowling. If you need a car back in the mid-late 1950s, give Albert a call. He'll give you a good deal. Hopefully, anyways. So, July 8th, 1958. Albert and his buddy, they drive out to Lathrop Wells. It's about 55, 60 miles away from Las Vegas. I don't know why they went out there. Let's just say they went out there to do a little bit of sightseeing. So they go out there and they're seeing the sights of Lathrop Wells and they have some drinks. Albert's friend, more than Al, because Al has to drive back home. So it starts getting really, really late, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, they got to go. Albert, his friend is toasted. So they leave Lathrop Wells and they're driving through Indian Springs. And it's about, right now, 4 o'clock in the morning. And Albert hears that dreaded sound that some of us have heard, including me, and it's not a good sound. It's the sound of your car breaking down. So, whatever. So he pulls his car over to the side of the road. He's like, oh, crap. They're in the middle of like the desert. They had just passed Indian Springs. There's nothing out there really now except a prison. Maybe they got a Walmart now. I'm not really sure. But back in the 50s, there really wasn't anything out in Indian Springs. So he tries to wake up his friends. He's like, hey, man, the car broke down. His friend's like, leave me alone, leave me alone, leave me alone. He's like, yes. So he gets out of the car, he pops the hood, and he just sees that the engine is fried. It's like smoky. He's like, crap, here we go. He knew he had a bad radiator, but that wouldn't prevent the car from just breaking down. So he said, it's hopeless. So he's like, okay, well, I guess I'm gonna like wait for somebody to pull over. So he's waiting and waiting. There's nobody out there. So he says, screw it. He's gonna start walking back. He had seen a gas station about 5 miles up the road. He starts walking to the gas station and he sees lights in the distance. He's like, oh crap, okay, cool. Like, you know, he's like, you know, kind of just waving and, you know, help, you know, I broke down, whatever. So a car pulls up and there's a young kid about 20 years old, and Albert's thinking to himself, this is a pretty nice car. So he said, hey man, I need a ride, my car broke down. And he's like, all right. He says, well, my friend has passed out of my car and it's about like half a mile down from where I started walking. So they go to the car and he tries to wake up his friend so they can go with him to Las Vegas. And the kid says, well, listen, because you didn't say anything about me taking you to Las Vegas. So, you know, if I take you to Las Vegas, which by the way, that was the direction he was going anyways, what's in it for me? And he goes, I'll fill up your gas tank. He's like, all right, that sounds like a plan. He tries to wake up his friend. His friend is just like Z's, just sleeping. He says, screw it. He goes, I'll just come back with a tow truck and just, you know, he'll wake up by then. So they go back the 5 miles towards Lathrop Wells. They go to the gas station and Albert says, hey, my name is Albert Bowling, pleased to meet you. And the guy's like, oh, my name's Terry. Very good. So they talk and blah, blah, blah. They go fill up the tank at the gas station. They turn around and they head to Las Vegas. So we fast forward about maybe a few hours. There's a guy driving from Las Vegas. He's going up to Indian Springs. He's driving over the side of the road. He sees somebody like laying in the road. And he's thinking like, what the hell? So he stops, he gets out, he sees this guy, and there's a pool of blood surrounding his head. He says, oh crap, this guy's dead. So he jumps back into his car and he screams to Indian Springs. And he stops at this place. He's not very familiar with the area, and he's just like knocking on doors. He goes, hey man, call the police, call the police. There's somebody dead on the side of the road. He's like banging on everybody's trailer at this trailer park out there. Someone finally calls the deputy sheriff. The sheriff comes out and the guy's like panicked. He's like, man, there's a guy that's dead on the side of the road. And he said, take me to him. They drive in the deputy's vehicle out to where he's seen him, and sure enough, he is dead. So he's like, okay, I'll call it in. And the guy says, hey, listen, there's also this car that's broken down about a mile away that I had passed. And I stopped to see if they needed help, if they were broken down. And there's some guys drunk, like just sleeping away. So they go to the car, and this guy, Albert's friend, is still like just like zoned out sleeping. The sheriff jumps out and he's like shaking his hands. He goes, wake the hell up, wake the hell up. And then finally he rouses this guy up and he says, what do you know about a guy that's dead down about a mile away from here? And he said, huh? And he says, yeah. Well, it could have been maybe 5 miles away. It was quite some ways away. It wasn't a mile, maybe 5 miles. So he says, what are you talking about? He goes, I'm talking about somebody that's dead on the side of the road. He goes, do you know who he is? And the guy's like, know who he is? He goes, I don't even know where I am. And he says, you're in Indian Springs, and there's a guy that's dead a few miles down the road. So the guy's looking around. He goes, I was with my friend Al, and he's gone. I don't know what the hell's going on. He takes his friend to where the body is, and he's looking. He goes, oh my God, that's Al. And he's like screaming and crying. He's going insane. He's going ballistic. So he later gets a ride down back to Las Vegas. So now they got a crime scene. Not many murders happen in Indian Springs. So the sheriff, he starts going, knocking on doors while, he calls the guys down here in Las Vegas to come up and pick up the body. I don't know if they're going to do an autopsy because it's pretty apparent that this guy was killed. And they don't have a coroner's office in Indian Springs. So the coroner's office from Las Vegas comes up to pick up the dead man that was Albert Bowling. So they bring him back here to do an autopsy. And while that's happening, he's knocking on all the trailers out in Indian Springs and the houses and saying, hey, and he has a picture of the dead man. And he's saying, does anybody recognize this guy? Nope, nothing. He goes to the gas station and he asks the guy, hey, do you recognize this guy? We got a dead person. He was murdered. And the guy's like, yeah, I seen him earlier this morning. And he goes, okay, what happened? Was he with somebody? He said, yeah, he was with a kid. He was maybe 20, 21 years old. He had a nice car. It was like a 55, 56 Chevy. I kind of thought it was weird. A kid so young had such a nice car. And he goes, well, what were they doing? He goes, nothing. He goes, I filled up their tank. I checked up under the hood to make sure they were okay to get to Las Vegas. And that was it. They seemed to be getting along pretty good. So the deputy sheriff, I think this was actually the sheriff of that was doing the investigation. Let's just say it's a deputy. So now they got some investigator or another trying to figure out who killed Albert Bowling. So about 4 days later, they get the results back from the autopsy. Now, I don't think they really did an autopsy. I think they just wanted to get the bullets from his head to see what caliber they were and all that. So they called him and they said, yeah, we pulled out 2 bullets. They came from a 30-30. And he's like, okay. So he hangs up the phone. He's like, 30-30. He said, man, he goes, wasn't there some kind of report about somebody with a 30-30? So he goes into his filing cabinet and it's looking into whatever reports. And he says, oh, yeah. He goes, 10 days ago, somebody that owns a gas station out in Beatty, Nevada, which is about 75 miles away from Indian Springs, he says, yeah, they reported that their 30-30 was stolen, along with some other stuff. So the investigator drives out to Beatty and to interview the guy that had that gun stolen. And he says, yeah, man, he goes, about three weeks ago, this kid with a car came in from California. He said he was like broke and he needed some work, so I put him to work. And this kid stole the register money out of the till, and he stole a couple other items, including my gun. So the guy was like, he goes, what's it? Give me a description of him. And he goes, he's about 2021 and had greasy hair. He's about 5'8", slight framed. He said his name was Terry Yarrington and that he was from California. And he said Terry Yarrington. So they look him up and they see that he has a record out of California. And the gas station owner, he's like, you know what? I bet you, since that guy stole from me, I bet you that car's stolen too, because how the hell is a kid that young gonna get a car that nice? So he starts the process of putting out an APB for this Terry Yarrington kid, and now he's wanted for open murder. So about maybe a few days after that, maybe about 3 or 4 days later, they find a car abandoned in Las Vegas. So they dust it for fingerprints, and the fingerprints come back to Terry Yarrington. So now they put out a warrant for his arrest for open murder. Now, he's only going to do the western 11 states. He's not going to start, calling other people in Mississippi and Louisiana looking for this guy. So as he's doing this, he gets a call about maybe the following month. Good news. We got good news. Well, good news and bad news. Okay, you get some good news. They got Terry Yarrington. Okay, good. The bad news is he's in a Mexican jail in Ensenada. Okay. So they go down to Ensenada, not very far past the border, I believe. So they go to the Mexican authorities and they're like, yeah, this guy came here and kidnapped some people and robbed them, beat them to hell. He's gonna do some time. And they refuse to extradite him. It's very hard if there's an American in Mexico to extradite him to the United States if he committed a crime, if he went down there to hide. So they say, okay, well, they're not gonna extradite him. So the story is like almost kind of forgotten. So, by the way, I forgot to mention earlier, the investigators, they did talk to Terry Yarrington while he was incarcerated down in Mexico, and he readily admitted to shooting and killing Albert Bowling. And they had asked him, well, why'd you kill him? And he said, well, I was giving him a ride and he started getting on my nerves because he kept telling me to drive faster, and I wanted to shut him up. So I shut him up by shooting him. And I shot him. I took his wallet. He had about $100 in it. And then I just threw his body out of the car and I left. Okay. He goes, can you get me out of here? Because this Mexican prison really sucks. And they said, no, well, we can't, because they're not going to extradite you. But as soon as they release you, you're going to be charged with open murder. He said, yeah, whatever. So we're going to fast forward, right? So this guy ends up doing 10 years in that Mexican prison for the kidnap, robbery, assault, all that good stuff. So he gets out and, well, nobody's waiting for him. It's 1968 and they just release him. So he's a free man. So he goes back to the border. So he's thinking, man, if I, cross the border, they're going to arrest me. So he's just like, screw it, whatever. And he gets to the border. They run his name. Everything's fine. He's like, okay, cool. So he gets out of the border. He's back in the United States 10 years later, and he decides to go to Texas for a bit. He goes to Texas, messes around, screws around. He goes up to Ohio. He commits some crime or another, and he gets arrested. He might have he could have robbed a bank. I have no idea. I know he did some kind of federal time. I'm not sure exactly what he did. So he gets locked up. Or it could have been a state prison. I mean, who knows? These stories kind of like they ebb and flow. But he did some prison time in Ohio. He gets out and he's thinking they're gonna run his name and that old murder from 1958 is gonna come up. Nothing. They release him. He's good to go. He goes back to Texas. He eventually settles down, gets married, and has a couple kids. And okay, everything is fine, right? Well, not so fast. So in September of 1979, it's been 21 years now since this murder has occurred. So he's living his best life in Houston, Texas. And he's just driving down the street and he gets pulled over by the cops. Okay, whatever. He gives him his license, registration, insurance, all that good stuff. And they come back and they radio for another car to come back. So when he sees us, he's like looking in the rearview mirror. He's like, oh crap, there's a second car pulling up. And they tell him, step out of the car, place your hands behind your back, you're under arrest. And he goes, what am I under arrest for? Okay, I was speeding, big deal. They're like, no, you have a murder warrant out of Clark County, which is where I'm at right now, Nevada, Las Vegas. He said, oh yeah, that guy I killed. Yeah, interesting. So they extradite him back to Las Vegas and they throw him in jail. Now, by this time now, it's been 21 years since the murder of Albert Boling. This guy, they have a written confession to the crime. He's not denying that he committed the crime. He readily said back in 1958 when he was in that Mexican prison, yeah, I killed him. And he even said. So they throw him in jail, and then now you got like some new investigators, and they see this like old case. They're like, okay, hey, look, this guy got picked up on a 21-year-old murder warrant, and they're like, okay, and they don't want to hear that. They're busy at they don't want to deal with this. Basically, this is an old story. So they go to the jail and they go talk to Terry Yarrington. And, they look up his record and they can see that he has a few arrests after he got out of the Mexican prison. But other than that, he's not going around gangbanging or anything like that. So they're like, they're looking about the old notes and the old, whatever, the confession. And they're like, okay, so you killed Albert Boling. And he's like, yeah. And they're like, why'd you kill him again? And he's like, dude, he just was annoying. He was like telling me, I didn't want to deal with this guy. So I killed him. Oh, okay. So the detectives on the case, they step out of the interrogation room and then they're talking to each other and they're like, look, dude, I don't know if we're going to be able to charge him with first-degree murder, maybe second-degree murder. Yeah, he's confessing, but the problem is this is an old story. A lot of people involved in this story are no longer going to be around. We're going to start getting eyewitnesses and all this and that. It's just, listen, I think it would be in our best interest, and they're busy. They don't got time for this. The courts don't have time for this. And they're like, look, we'll talk to the prosecutor, and if we can get him to write out the story, a written confession again of what happened, we'll work out a deal with him. They go back into the room and they talk to Terry, and they're like, all right, listen, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna tape record again your confession. You're gonna write out what you exactly did. If you do that, we're going to advise the prosecuting office that we're only gonna go with involuntary manslaughter, voluntary manslaughter versus a second-degree murder. And he's like, thinking about it for a minute. He's like, okay, I already admitted what I said. I mean, they could give me a second-degree murder, which is a life sentence, and then I would only be able to parole after 10 years if I get parole. So he's like, okay, I'll take the deal. So he writes out his confession. They record it. He goes to court, and the judge is looking at this old murder case, and the prosecutor goes along with the deal. So, the judge doesn't always have to go along with the prosecutor, but they did. So they sentenced Terry Yarrington to, I think he got like 6 or 7 years in prison for voluntary manslaughter. He probably did 3 or 4 years. He got out, went back to Texas. And I think he died in 2006. I don't know if he got into any more trouble after that. But this is the final resting place of the man that was murdered for no reason other than supposedly, he was getting on that man's nerves, which I don't believe. I think he just meant to rob and kill him. That's it. And that's that. Evangeline Tate Skylstead was a nurse here in Las Vegas, and she had a sister that lived in Wyoming. Sister was very, very ill, so she flew up there to go visit her. She might be seeing her for the last time. And on the return flight back, she was aboard a very, very small airplane. There was about 15 passengers, 4 crew, Western Airlines. And they crashed, unfortunately, in Utah, killing everybody on board but 2 people. And sadly, Evangeline was one of the dead. Both were born about 6 weeks apart, and both died about 11 weeks apart. Our special little angel, God's most beautiful little flower, Mommy and Daddy love you very much. I must say, I love that picture. That's why I stopped. I just love those pictures from like the 70s. That's what I'm guessing this was taken at. Okay guys, I am out of here. I'm hitting the road, not leaving Las Vegas, but just got other stories to do. Catch up with you on the next video. Peace out.